I have to tell you, this is not typical for Onaka Transport Solutions. We are professionals, held to the highest authority. This sort of thing never happens around here. Really? It happens twice a day?
What has happened to Imagineering? I'd like to blame it on the merger of Disney's divisions and lay it squarely on the shoulders of Disney's Parks, Experiences, and Products Chairman Bob Chapek. He seems to be the one to blame the things nowadays, but the truth is this started way before the reorganization. I used to have a great deal of respect for the Disney Imagineering. Yep, Tony Baxter, Leota Toombs, and her daughter, Kim Irvine. Existencio, Joe Rohde, Raleigh Crump, Mary Blair, Marty Sklar, and my favorite Imagineer, Bob Gurr, and many others. These were guys who cared. They followed Mickey's 10 Commandments. No, not that Mickey. Mickey Steinberg, the Vice President of Imagineering. It seems that nowadays, Imagineering's not paying attention to the first two. 1, know your audience. 2, wear your guest's shoes. Don't forget the human factors, and try to experience the parks from the guest's point of view. Apparently, in their eyes, there are no disabilities. See, I'm in a wheelchair, but I can take a few steps, and even at that, there are some rides I can't go on. And even worse, there are rides that I used to be accessible and no longer are. Case in point, Pirates of the Caribbean. This ride does require you to transfer from the chair. Until a few years ago, it was one of my favorite rides. You'd take your chair up to the boat, and when you finished, it was sitting there waiting for you on the other side. From there, you took an elevator to the ground floor while everyone else rode up on the moving sidewalk. Well, for some reason, say it's due to manning, some say it's due to aging elevators. Anyway, they completely changed the loading procedure. Now, you have to leave your chair outside by the ride's entrance and switch to one of Disney's manual wheelchairs. And if you don't have someone with you, well, you're just screwed. See, if you can't use a manual wheelchair due to limitations, say missing or injured arm, well, again, you're out of luck. After you exit the ride, well, there's no wheelchairs waiting for you. You have to make your way across the dock and up the moving sidewalk. Now, if there's no one with you, you'd have to make your way through the store and then across the entirety of the front of the facade of the ride just to retrieve your wheelchair. If you're a big guy like me, well, there are even more things you have to consider. 1, there may not be any larger wheelchairs available. There are times I've seen when there were no chairs available. And believe me when I say, some of those chairs are in really poor shape. 2, someone has to push me. It's a long push. As I said, I can only take a few steps, and with no wheelchairs available at the end of the ride, well, across the dock and up the moving sidewalk, that's just not a few steps. I can understand some of the rides not being accessible to wheelchairs. It'd be really difficult to lock a wheelchair in a rock and roller coaster. But I can't ride these rides due to my back injury anyway, but I'm following Imagineering Commandment number 2, wear your guest shoes. Not every disability is the same as mine. I also realized that some of the rides were built long before ADA, but I've always thought that Imagineers were far more advanced than that. Turns out, they're just men, not supermen. But by now, you have to know a lot of people are in wheelchairs. Not everyone in those wheelchairs is just lazy. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed into law in 1990. It seeks to equal the playing field, not just in the workplace, but in housing and transportation. It does not require Disney to make all their rides or all their resort rooms handicap accessible. But handicapped people enjoy parks and staying at Disney just like everybody else. I'm kind of amazed at how much money I spend at Disney. I mean, I love staying at Walt Disney World. My wife makes it a point to order up an accessible room with a roll-in shower. Those rooms have all been great, except for one time, but we're not going to get into that. This is about the parks, rides, and attractions. See, what's made me think about this is since 2017, Disney has opened 4 new lands in the U.S. Pandora, the world of Avatar, was the first, giving us the Navi River Journey and Flights of Passage attractions. In 2018, Toy Story Land opened in Disney's Hollywood Studios, giving us 2 more rides, Slinky Dog Dash and Alien Swirling Saucers. The third ride already existed in the form of Toy Story Mania. It's a shoot-'em-up ride that previously opened up on what is now Pixar Place, which, incidentally, is wheelchair accessible. And finally, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opened on both coasts in 2019. Initially, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run was the only attraction, but as they worked out the kinks, the second attraction opened in the form of Rise of the Resistance to rave reviews. First, at Disney World on December 5th, followed by Disneyland's copy on the 17th of January. Guests seem to love these attractions. Rise of the Resistance and Flights of Passage both would need a new ticket category if Disney still used ticket books. They'd be at least an F ticket, but they might start a new G ticket just for these popular rides. This is a total of 8 rides now, if you count both coasts, and none of them are wheelchair accessible. Now, I can understand if Disney was buying off-the-shelf attractions, but there was no excuse not to make custom-made ride cars wheelchair accessible. I mean, even Ellen's Energy Adventure was handicap accessible with a straight wheelchair ride-on. And if you wonder what it's like for some to transfer, I want you to watch this short video provided by Nikki and her husband Ed on their trip to Disneyland's Rise of the Resistance. It'll open your eyes, and it should be required viewing for Imagineers responsible for building new attractions. You see, Ed's a huge Star Wars fan who couldn't wait to experience Disneyland's Rise of the Resistance. You'll notice I didn't say he was a huge disabled Star Wars fan, just a Star Wars fan, like everybody else. I mean, how much easier would it have been to just put a handicap ramp up to the back of the ride vehicle? As a further example, Pandora's Na'vi River Journey was built in 2017 and requires you to transfer, whereas Small World, with Disneyland's being built in 1964, 50 years prior, has 2 wheelchair accessible boats. Over to Epcot, Living with a Land boat ride, built 8 years before ADA has wheelchair boats. Also at Epcot, both Journey into Your Imagination and Under the Seas with Nemo and Friends have wheelchair accessible cars. Now, I don't know if they did in their original configuration, like in 1987 when we visited Seabase Alpha. I was only using a cane at that point, so like everyone else, unaffected by being in a wheelchair, I don't remember if they had wheelchair accessible ride vehicles or not. Ditto for the Figment ride, Journey into Imagination. But I would venture to say that Living with a Land probably did. I mean, I could be wrong, and I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments section if I am. But what's the deal with these new lands? They put in ADA ramps in Galaxy's Edge, 1 inch to 1 foot rise. The restrooms all have ADA stalls. It's like ride Imagineers had no communications with the land engineers amongst themselves. And while I don't know what Walt would have done, I do know what Mickey would do. Mickey would want everybody to enjoy the parks. No, not that Mickey. Mickey Mouse. Amy has notified her personal assistant that she'll be unavailable the rest of the day. It's gotta be pretty important, but I'm sure she'll check on your comments as soon as she's able. I'm kinda interested to know if you liked the video too. If you did, why not give it a big thumbs up? Keeps me motivated and Emmy amused. You know, if you'd like to see more of these videos, you could subscribe to the channel. It's free, just click on that subscription button. But take it a step further and click on that bell icon. That way you'll be notified the next time I upload a video. And if you'd like to be a member of the team, you can sign up with our Patreon page at patreon.com/asbobseesit-videos. You can pledge as little as $1 a month. Every sponsorship is important. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Thank you, sir.